I'd like to call the Capital Investment Committee meeting for March 27th to order. We'll begin with approval of the minutes for March 21st. And Representative Runbeck, you look like you've been studying them.
Mr. Chair, I would be happy to move the minutes of March 21st.
Minutes of March 21st. Approval has been moved. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Today we are going to look at 4 bills. This is informational. And so let's see, is Representative Loon here? Oh, she is. I overlooked her.
Oh, that was not nice.
Well,
Mr. Chair.
he was standing in front of her. Anyway. There's someone else. All right, we shall begin. Representative Loon, welcome to the committee. You have House File 3796. And begin your presentation, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Representative Jennifer Loon, and I'm pleased to present House File 3796. As Chair of the Education Finance Committee, our committee has been hearing a number of proposals sort of under the broad umbrella of school safety. And I'm pleased to bring forward this idea as one of the ways in which we could help to provide our schools with more resources to address critical upgrades that they may need to do to their facilities under the umbrella of safety. We've considered a number of proposals in the education finance arena to allow them flexibility with some of the funding streams that they have, their long-term facilities maintenance. There have been concepts around the Safe Schools levy. But since it is a bonding year, Mr. Chair and committee members, I thought it was appropriate as well that the committee may want to consider providing some bonding money for some of these purposes, especially for some of our schools, and I'm thinking primarily about a lot of our smaller rural districts, but this could obviously apply to others as well. Some funds that they could apply for in a grant program that would be administered by the Department of Education. And I've had a chance to talk with the department about this, and I think really conceptually the way I'm looking at it is when we provide a school safety package that schools would be performing an audit if they haven't already to assess what their needs are, and I think most of our districts have already done that or have been doing it, that they would hopefully look to other resources that they may have available first, but that this would be, again, a program that they could apply to for maybe those projects that they would consider important that are just going to be out of reach in any reasonable amount of time unless they can apply for a grant. So with that, I'd be happy to allow my testifier to provide any other thoughts on this.
Welcome, Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Fred Nolan, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Rural Education Association. We represent 224 rural school districts across our state and 30 cooperatives. With the heightened awareness of student safety and the tight state budget, we appreciate the concern and creativity with which Representative Loon and other legislators have approached this issue. All of you have school districts facing the challenge. But allow me to explain a little bit the reference to long-term facility maintenance and how this works together with current legislation. Long-term facility maintenance is a program that's allowing districts to deal with the leaky roofs and boilers and issues that have been building up, and that was introduced 3 years ago and is moving up in terms of funding. Representative Loon has a bill, House File 3320, which will allow flexibility in that for safety projects. Within the long-term facility maintenance, the 25 largest school districts in the state have the ability to raise local property tax revenue with an approval by the department. The other 300 are limited to an amount per pupil. Right now it'll be $380 per pupil. So those districts, mainly our members, have flexibility but are faced with a dilemma. Do we replace a leaking roof or do we build a more secure entrance? So it's flexibility, but there's limits to it and it makes some difficulty. 3796 will allow those districts to stretch those long-term facility maintenance dollars with grants without shifting the burden to the local homeowners, farmers, or businesses through a bond election. The bill is pretty well crafted. It will ensure the use of the funds is wise. Audits are required, as Chair Loon stated. And MDE must consult with the Minnesota School Safety Center before issuing grants and putting criteria. 50% of the funds are reserved for grants outside the metropolitan area. Because of the 25 largest districts having access to other funds, other resources, we'd recommend that 50% of the funds go to Greater Minnesota. Just a consideration, the grants may be smaller in Greater Minnesota than some of your Twin Cities districts that are not part of the largest 25. Anyway, we thank you for bringing this forward, Representative Loon. We thank the committee for considering it to address the heightened need for secure school facilities.
Thank you. And, thank you, Representative Loon, for the concern you've been showing with trying to do more things for school security. I think a very important and timely thing to be doing. What are some things that you foresee that this could be used for?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I think, well, securing entrances, I think, has been kind of high on the priority list for school districts. And, I've met with probably 60 or 70 different school districts, representatives just this year, since session started alone. And I can tell you, schools are kind of all over the map on where they are at. Some have already done this, and they may have organized their buildings so they've really got one main entrance in and out, and it's secured, and you have to provide identification to be buzzed in. Others may have several entrances. They may have a security guard or not, or school personnel posted there during the school day to monitor who comes in and out, and everything in between. So I think, that would be a top issue. I mean, other things that districts are looking at doing are security cameras. Their communications system within their buildings for being able to communicate with students and staff it is another drill. It could be, I don't know how many schools are looking at things like replacing the glass in their front with something that's shatterproof or bulletproof, or some ways it's a coating that's put on the glass. I mean, those are just some ideas that schools have discussed with me.
Thank you. Representative Hausman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was hoping that choice would come in another form, because frankly, I don't want us to be spending any money on securing doors and windows and glass and walls. If we want to make the kids feel safe, that feels like giving up. It says bullets are always going to come toward this building. So how do we make those kids feel safe? But here's what we underfund. School counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, school nurses, school support personnel. If I had a choice about how to make kids feel safe, I would far rather spend it on people than on securing a fort.
Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Hausman. I agree to a point with you, and so I want to make sure that you understand that we are looking at both and. It's not an either-or situation. We've done probably 4 days, maybe 5, of hearings in education finance, and most of our time has been discussing school-linked mental health grants, additional counselors, social workers, and support. But it also works in concert with having our schools feel like they have done what they can to, again, secure entrances, make sure that they've got systems in place of knowing who's coming in to the schools, and that they've got a system that they feel confident in, that they are screening visitors and those kind of things. So it is not to the exclusion of those things, but again, trying to provide a range of tools for our schools to make sure that they are addressing safety in a very large sense. And yes, that absolutely speaks to more support staff for students, more mental health counseling, and that is a need that no matter where I go in Minnesota, a small rural district, large suburban districts, inner city, that is an increasing need all of our schools are facing. So that would be part of what I would envision being a larger package of school safety items that I hope we will be considering this year.
Representative Sock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll respectfully disagree with my colleague. After 17 years of teaching, and I think I counted up 15 different building configurations, from a school that graduated 25 kids a year up to a school that graduated a couple hundred. So there's every spectrum in there, and I can tell you, in my experience, this is purely my personal experience, if something needs to be done quickly that will impact security, it is the front door, and it is management of the people entering. We can call these things different things, but I think under the bonding world, we are going to have to be defined to access management. We really go afield of spending capital investment, I think, if we go into people building systems, policy and all that other stuff, which I really think needs to be done. I very much support it, but from this particular chair, my interpretation, I know that the smallest of the districts would have the most difficult putting in a decent locking door at the front of their building. They'd have more difficulty doing that than large schools do. It's sort of like a joke if you have at your access a big school budget, but the very little places, being able to put a secure door on that building is extremely difficult. So I would offer that as my thinking into this system, and I don't know if we can actually even spend money, where'd my phone a friend expert go, can spend this kind of money on capital investment, can spend it on people, programs, and that sort of stuff anyway, which I don't think is necessarily your intent, so.
Now, and Mr. Chair, if I could clarify.
Representative Loon.
When I was referencing those other things, those would be things that would be initiatives that would come from the Education Finance Committee with any supplemental funds we would get. Again, this was just an offering or an approach to try to say, could we provide additional assistance to schools with those physical upgrades and structural changes that schools may want to do in the name of school safety. And Mr. Nolan maybe had a comment on that as well.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Runbeck, one of the things one of our members had a sheriff walk through and gave him a list of 8 things they could do. Says, I don't have money to do any of those 8. So now you have the sheriff making a recommendation. Schools need the ability to respond to these audits. It's an all of the above strategy. In the bonding bill, we're looking at the physical, secure site.
Representative Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And a couple of questions. I know we haven't allocated money specifically for this, and I'm curious if we're talking, $5 million or we're talking $500 million. And I'll ask the next question because I think this will sort of get us.
Representative Dean, 5 would be closer.
Okay. As I begin to, as I look at the bill, lines 1.14 through 1.16, where it talks about prioritizing grant applications, where half of the grants must be awarded to school districts with administrative offices located outside of the 7-county metropolitan area. And as I think about this, I think about, so what is the ratio of students who actually are within the 7-county metro area to the number of students outside the 7-county metro area? And then the issue of schools, the number of schools, because I think that has an impact. So I don't think it's just one or the other. I think it's a relationship of the two. And I'm wondering how the grant applications would actually prioritize those schools that may need a grant of $25,000 for security upgrades, or a larger school which may need a grant of $250,000 for that application, when I see that at least half of the grants, are we talking about the number of grants, or are we talking the amount of money? I'm just trying to get an understanding of what are the specifics you're thinking about when you think about this.
Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Dean. And, I think you have a good question there, and I know my testifier was suggesting that it would be, the money be split versus the number of grants. And, I think that is something for consideration. I don't have those figures that you're asking for right in front of me. I can tell you that there's probably slightly more students in the metro area, but there's 300 and, I'm going to fudge the number here. There's, let's say, over 350 school districts across the state of Minnesota. So predominantly, there's a larger number of districts in greater Minnesota because a lot of them are smaller in that, and so there's more of them. So I think we're trying to find a way to address the needs of schools that are in various places with their building security and their facilities, and also trying to be mindful if this is created, how schools would be able to access this. And again, in talking with the department, it is my vision as the author that you would expect schools, if we pass this other package with some other flexibility with other existing funds, maybe the Safe Schools Levy and the Long-Term Facilities Maintenance, that this would be more of a grant program of last resort, if you will, after schools had looked at other options available to them. And the money I left purposely blank because I view that to be the purview of this committee and Chairman Erdahl.
Well, thank you very much, Representative Loon.
Follow-up?
Mr. Nolan.
Mr. Chair and Representative Dean, the Twin Cities districts, the 25 largest districts, all but a couple of them are in the Twin Cities. So those districts have the ability to, if the flexibility comes with long-term facility maintenance, to be used for school safety improvements. They can submit plans to the department. They would then use their own levy authority to raise those funds. So they'd be kind of lower on the grant list than the other 308 districts who don't have that ability. So there's many Twin Cities districts have another source of funds, should the flexibility come with long-term facility maintenance.
Representative Dean.
So I think, thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Loon. I think that how these grants get prioritized, I think that that's really a critical issue. And I also think that there should be a report back to the legislature after, a series of grants have been allotted, so we can understand how those are used. And I would just say that although, some metro districts have the ability to, put forward levies to cover some of these costs. And in my school district, I mean, they're looking at a $33 million shortfall. So if we're now asking them on top of that to levy for the money necessary to do this, I think that that's, it's probably very problematic for the people in my district. And I mean, I understand the concern of, some of our smaller rural schools, that there's not a lot of tax base there, but, there's probably not any school district outside the Sutherland County metro area that's looking at a $33 million deficit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And thank you,
Representative Loon?
Mr. Chair and Representative Dean, yes. And, that is not to, clearly in how I've crafted the bill, it's not to exclude those top 25 from applying, and that, again, just kind of describing my thinking on if the department is, if the money's put forward, the department's tasked with how they're going to prioritize what I would anticipate could be quite a few applications and what they would look at. But I think certainly, the overall financial picture of the schools and what they may be facing are very valid points of consideration for this process and for the grant program.
Representative Luick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Loon, for bringing this forward. I heard some comments about not spending a nickel on bricks and mortar, and a little disappointed in that. As Representative Salk had mentioned, there are some places here in Minnesota where but all you can do is shut the door and lock it because you're going to be 15, 20 minutes away from law enforcement response. I happen to have a number of school districts that deal with that on a daily basis. Schools, high schools that are located, elementary schools that are located in a town that does not have a single police officer. So they rely on opportunity for a state highway patrolman to be out there and happen to be in the area if they need an immediate response. Maybe the game warden will happen to be around and could provide assistance, or if we have a sheriff's deputy in that part of the county. This business of having the ability to really tighten down that building if it's necessary, because I'll just be blunt with you, that's all they can do initially. Because with the exception of the Aiken School District, which happens to have at least their high school across the street from the courthouse and the county jail and the sheriff's department, the rest of them are 35 miles away from a response. And so this is important. And I would suggest that another element that we might want to look at when you evaluate where these dollars should go in rural Minnesota is also evaluate the ability to respond with first responders and law enforcement, and particularly law enforcement, because even in our rural district, there is a huge differentiation between what you would do at Hill City or McGregor versus Aiken, Crosby, Ironton, or Brainerd. Completely different emergency immediate responses, and generally that first response to lock things down is just absolutely critical. So I would be very cautious about, I absolutely agree, we got a huge long-term mental illness crisis in this state, and we all danced to that music for the last 25, 30 years. But in the meantime, this is pretty easy stuff, and that's just simply doing some basic stuff to make sure we secure those buildings. So, yeah, I would ask that we at least consider law enforcement response as another potential criteria when we look at where those dollars might go.
And thank you.
Representative Loon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Lewick, and I think that's a really good point.
Ms. Dyson, did you have anything to add on bondability?
Mr. Chair, was there a specific question, or what?
I thought someone over here had a question on whether this was eligible. Well, I guess you could just tell us.
Mr. Chair, the bill is general, so that it talks about pre-design, design, construct, furnish, and equip improvements, including renovation of buildings, and that is in publicly owned facilities is a bondable expense. Some of the examples of things that might be included, like cameras and communication systems, those as standalone projects are not bondable. That's equipment. If it's part of an overall renovation where that's just a small portion of what the costs of the project are, that it can be included, but it cannot be bonded for separately.
Thank you. And Representative Hanson,
Thank you, Mr. Chair,
we're
and
trying to get a Minlar's question out here for you, too.
I hope not. Following up on Representative Dean, I think whenever we put things into half or 60 or 40, whether it's the number of grants or the amount of money, districts like mine or Representative Frankie's or Representative Jurgens fall through the cracks. The poorer districts and the first-tier suburbs lose out because they don't have the capacity to levy. And if the money is based on geography rather than need, then you have a line of people getting the money versus the ones that are most in need. So I know this is the way we always do things, but I have a concern about that. My other concern is, we can dance around the issue here about safety, but what we're really talking about is if a shooter is coming into the building, and we may have to be considering this for our colleges and our universities that we have direct authority over. The price on this may be much larger than we think. And general obligation bonds, if we're doing this to stop shooters, then maybe we should have revenue bonds, and we have a fee on the ammunition or on the weapons to help pay for the bonds that we're trying to protect the public from. I think the first response that we have as legislators is to spend money on things, because we are experienced at doing that. But we should look at some creative ways of dealing with this, because I'm not sure there's a finish line here. And ongoing revenue to pay just for this, not only for the public schools, but for the public institutions, I think we're going to be grappling with, along with all the other tasks we're going to have to do relating to this issue.
Representative Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you get a large bump in the amount of money that we're going to be spending in here? We keep adding more and more things in, and I have heard dozens of comments on dozens of bills about this is really necessary. We really have got to do this. Representative Groslow's school district up where the kids are going back and forth, the 11 kids making the two border crossings. There is a finite amount of money that we have that we've talked about. And personally, I think this probably belongs in the education department since it's schools. The other thing is $5 million cut in half, $2.5 million split among 308 school districts. That's not even a Band-Aid. What, you're going to fix a window in each school? That's not really going to get a lot done.
Remember, Representative Considine, Representative Dean suggested maybe, 500 million too.
Well, but Representative Loon said it was going to be closer to $5
No,
million.
I said that actually.
Yeah. $5 million cut in half, $2.5 million over, like I say, 308. I'm using what her figure is. That's, like I say, that's not going to get a lot done. So that sounds like a dog and pony show to me. And I'm wondering why we're discussing that when we have $3 billion of other requests that we have been studying for months that we need to get taken care of. This should be back in Education Department, and they should be dealing with it, not us. Thank you.
Well, and thank you, Representative Considine. I mean, it certainly is a valid point, but in terms of the purpose of what we're doing, this is an informational hearing. We are hearing a lot of projects. We've got, again, about $3 billion more in requests than I anticipate having funding for. And so you're going to hear not necessarily this one, that I'm not referring directly to this, but you'll be hearing a lot of things that we're not going to be funding. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't listen to them or we shouldn't vet them, and there is the possibility, if we wish, to take a closer look at them. And that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just frustrated sometimes.
We all are. Representative Detmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Loon, thank you for bringing it to our attention here. And I think if everybody remembers, it wasn't too long ago that I chair the Veterans Committee, and I had the Adjutant General come into my committee because what happened, I think, in the state of Tennessee, where there was recruiting station that was attacked. And so I asked the Adjutant General at that time, General Nash, to put together what he plans on doing in securing all the different recruiting stations that we have around the state of Minnesota. And, we're talking about not necessarily state money, but we're talking about federal money too. And our recruiting stations now are not gun-free zones anymore. I mean, we have people there that are armed, and they've secured the facilities and getting into the facility, and sometimes the type of glass that they have on the front door and so forth. So they've taken steps to secure the physical security. And I believe that that's probably the first step we should do with our schools, is take that first step of securing the facility so that people aren't be going in there on a soft target. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we will now move on. If you have any final comments, Representative Loon, you may make them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I appreciate your consideration. I know that you have many, many requests. But again, as we look at possible tools we could try to offer to our school districts under this large umbrella and large task of helping to secure safer schools and help our students feel safe, I would just ask for your consideration as you make your important deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Representative Layman, who has a couple of bills for us today, starting with House File 2842. Welcome, Representative Layman. Please introduce yourself and begin your presentation.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee, for hearing us today. I'm here today actually with a couple of bills, and I'm bringing them to these particular projects to you because on your tour, with your extensive state tour, you did come to the Grand Rapids area, but these two particular projects were not visited for various reasons. So I would just appreciate your time and attention just to hear the projects firsthand down here in St. Paul. So the one we're looking at today is House File 2842. And this would be a bond in project for Itasca County. And on Itasca County property sits a radio tower. And it's not just any radio tower, it's a radio tower that services Northern Community Radio, which is kind of a unique station. It's part of the Ampers system. It's not Minnesota Public Radio, it's nonprofit community radio that covers pretty much all of northern Minnesota. So it has a small staff. It's primarily operated and programmed by volunteers, I think over 100 volunteers. So it's really a unique station. Unfortunately, it's been in business for over 40 years, and the entire tower's structure has been found to be close to collapse. And so when we're looking at opportunities for how we can get this thing fixed, it's rather expensive. And as you'll hear here in a little bit, lots of fundraising going on. But in addition to local fundraising, we are here before you today asking for $513,230 in bonds. And I would, Mr. Chair, like to introduce Maggie Montgomery. She has been the director, the coordinator there at the radio station, and she can give more details.
Welcome, Ms. Montgomery. Please introduce yourself and begin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Maggie Montgomery. I'm General Manager of Northern Community Radio. And as Representative Layman said, we have been a founding member of Ampers and have been serving the northern Minnesota area since 1976. We have a lot of community programs and participation, and on KAXE you would hear a mix of music and entertainment and public affairs from a northern Minnesota point of view. And we have a local board of directors, over 100 volunteers, and a small staff. We provide emergency alert services to our region and free space to the local ham club and the weather spotters on our tower. And we have 4 broadcast signals, and you can see that in the map, in the packet, in the handout. And we serve the Iron Range, Brainerd, Ely, Bemidji, and the Bagley areas. And all of these signals depend on the KAXE signal originating in Grand Rapids. And so for several years, we knew that we had some work to do in our transmission site, and we had embarked on a project to raise funds on our own to replace the transmitter there. And in our due diligence, we also had a tower inspection done by Valmont Structures that was the manufacturer of the tower. And when the results came back in early 2016, we were dismayed to learn that our tower is in danger of failing, and it can't be strengthened to meet the code. Valmont found that our tower is overstressed with just a 40-mile-per-hour wind and no ice. So when I was driving home yesterday, I actually live in Representative Grussel's district, between Grand Rapids and my house in Hubbard County. The station went off the air, and ignorance had been bliss. I never would have thought this before, but I wondered if the tower had collapsed under the load of all the ice that fell yesterday in northern Minnesota. So in response to this, it wasn't the tower, it was an outage with Lake Country Power. We put together a budget and came up with $864,000 in equipment and permits and installation, which doesn't include any staff time or any soft costs for the project. And, but due to the tower expense, the cost of our project had crossed the line from something we could do ourselves to something that we needed help with. So because our tower and transmitter are located on county land, we worked with Itasca County, and we've been working closely with them. The Itasca County Board of Commissioners supported us and voted to work with us to submit a bonding request. And we met with our local legislators, including Representative Layman and Senator Eichhorn, and they both said that they would help. So then we set out to raise money in our community. And in a little over 3 months, we heard from almost 800 families who pledged $207,251.24. And then we worked with the Blandon Foundation, and they came up with another $250,000 for this project. They voted last week with their board of directors if we can find the rest of the money. So we're also ready to submit a grant to the IRRB. So this is why we've raised a lot of money on our own, and locally our community has come through, and now we are at the point of asking for some help from the state of Minnesota with some bonding funds. The county will own this tower, and they will lease it back to us for a small fee every year. So in summary, our tower is in danger of failing, our transmitter is obsolete. We asked our community for some support, and they came through in spades, and now we're asking for some help also from the state to finish the project.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Montgomery. So failing means falling?
That's what it means, yes.
How tall-
Crumpling, they kind of crumple down.
How tall is it?
It's 315 feet.
How close is the nearest house?
It's far. It's an 80-acre parcel of tax forfeit land.
All right, just getting clear on that. Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm asking about, because you mentioned the IRRB.
Yes.
And I'm just kind of wanting to know, maybe the research can help us, but is there a portion of IRRB that involves itself in granting to projects such as this? And is there a law that governs how they participate?
You questioning
Well,
Ms.
I
Dyson?
think, I'm asking, yes, research, I think. Or is it wide open, and do they do as they please
I
when they
think
please?
Ms. Dyson is preparing to answer.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chair, Representative Rumbeck, I actually don't have any expertise in the IRRR, so I would defer to someone who does. I don't know.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Layman?
Mr. Chair and Representative Runbeck, the IRRB does work in the area of community development, economic development. They don't have a program specifically for a project like this, but they do have some emergency funds that can be made available in smaller amounts. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Other comments, questions? Seeing none, thank you for the discussion, and Representative Layman, you can move on to your next bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So we have House File 2866. Representative Layman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and committee, again for hearing a second project. This is for a community that's 15 minutes down the road from Grand Rapids, on the western edge of Itasca County, Deer River. And Deer River is outside of the IRRB service area. So they're a feisty little community that's doing things on their own. And this is a project that has been causing them some pain for a period of time. What's in front of you is House File 2866, and it is a bonding request for sewer and water system improvements. And the reason that it is urgent is because the city of Deer River really can't accommodate any further growth, residential or commercial growth, until this issue is addressed. They simply don't have the capacity. With me today is Bob Beaver, who is with the city of Deer River, and he'll be presenting some additional information, but also the city administrator and a city council member are behind us if there should be additional questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Beaver.
Mr. Chair, thank you. My name is Bob Deaver. I'm with SEH in the city of Deer River, the appointed city engineer. In your information in your packet, you should have some information from the city of Deer River. Basically, the project consists of 3 different aspects. There's the wastewater stabilization ponds, sanitary sewer mains, and water mains. The first one is the sanitary sewer stabilization ponds. What is the plan is to create a new pond, a 4th pond. They have a 3-pond system right now. A 4th pond will
I'm having
increase.
trouble hearing.
I was wondering about that. Would you speak a little more directly into the mic, please?
Sure,
Mr.
sorry about that. There's 3 different aspects to this project. The first is the stabilization ponds, the second is the sanitary sewer mains, and the third is the water mains. The first aspect, the stabilization ponds, is to build a 4th pond. They currently have a 3-pond system. The 4th pond will create additional capacity, which is much needed for the growth of the city. There are some issues with the ponds that right now where they're working through the MPCA with the facility plan that basically checks what the existing facility is like and what they need for improvements. That facility plan with the MPCA has been approved, and the pond will be sized to meet city's current and future capacity needs. The sanitary sewer mains, their mains currently are 60 years old. In some of these areas are clay tile pipe. They experience large amounts of I&I inflow and infiltration into their water system, wastewater collection system. That is one of the issues with the capacity into the ponds. By replacing the mains will reduce the I&I and it would create additional capacity again into the pond system. The water mains themselves are again 60 years old with old pipes, deteriorated condition and poor condition. The operating system with repair for emergency breaks is very expensive on the city, and they are working at lower pressures than what they would like to be for fire protection because of the issue with the deteriorated pipes. The total project cost is estimated at $7 million. Roughly half is for the ponds, $3.5 million, and $3.5 million for the water main and sanitary sewer mains. The request is for $3.5 million. The city has been working with different funding sources. The USDA Rural Development is providing some of the required matching funds, and the city has been working very hard to do their part in their community for infrastructure improvements. In 2017, they just finished a cooperative project with MnDOT on Trunk Highway 2, where MnDOT completed the street portion, the city completed the utility portion. In 2019, another one coming up is Trunk Highway 6. It's again a cooperative project with MnDOT. Cost is estimated at $375,000 for that. The Trunk Highway 2 was $550,000. These are large projects that take a lot of the city's annual budget, and they're trying to do their part as they go. The project rationale, the city infrastructure needs improvements so that it can have additional capacity for additional dwellings, for residential dwellings and business expansion. The water system is a deteriorated condition, operating at the lower pressure. The lower pressure makes it difficult for the fire protection needs, and additional flow will reduce the I&I, again causing additional capacity into the ponds. The discussion on the bottom of that page is the items that have not been pursued because of the capacity issue. They involve a senior phase living facility, a motel, a restaurant, the C-store development on Highway 2, and industrial park development. Obviously, those are much needed in development activities within the city for growth within the community. We've had to put all those on hold because of the capacity issue with the sanitary sewer. Lastly, on the last page, basically some of the need, again, the city doing their part what they can with their limited funds, just showing the Deer River income level comparisons. The state of Minnesota, 28% low to moderate income. Deer River is at 64.2 low to moderate income. State of Minnesota is at 10.2 below state poverty rate. The city of Deer River is at 16.8 below. Itasca County, the median household income, $47,000. Deer River's median household income is only $27,000. In your packet, there's also a drawing just quickly that shows the need or the location of the different activities, the pond system, and the areas highlighted in red where the sewer and the street projects would be completed. With that, I turn it over to the chair for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Beaver. First of all, what is the population of Deer Deer River?
Deer River's current population is, Mr. Chair, 942.
And where do you, you've made request of the Public Facilities Authority, I assume. Do you know where your ranking is on their list?
Mr. Chair, correct. We are ranked at number 46.
You want to step up to the mic, please, so we can hear you? And identify yourself, please.
Mr. Chair and members, I am City Administrator Mark Fox.
Mark is the chair.
Currently, we are on the PPL rating at 205, and our points are 43, scoring 43 points.
Okay, thank you. Members? Representative Hausman.
That was my question.
You knew I was going to ask that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Representative Uglum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad the city administrator's here, so my question is for him. So typically with your city, and I've been through it many times, going to Grand Rapids or whatever, going to Lake Country Power to pay my bills and all of that. But do you have a city sewer fund that you contribute to through your tax base and also for water main fund? Do you have that set up within your city budget?
Right now, we do not have a capital improvement fund for sewer and water. We are just maintaining the services we have with our budget.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Uglum.
Yeah, thank you. Well, as many of these guys know, I'm a former mayor in Champlin, and we do that on a regular basis because obviously the time comes to pay the piper, and with 60-year-old infrastructure there, obviously you need to do that. But sometimes it's for instance, I don't know if you sell water to your constituents there in town. We do, and we always make a little bit of money on selling our water, and we put it in our water main fund for future reference, for future infrastructure. Sometimes it's hard to do, and politicians like to raid those funds, but it's good to have in the future. So I just offer that as a suggestion for your city leaders as you go down the road and look at your budgets, because this day will come again in another 60 years or so, and it's nice to have some money on hand. Thank you.
Representative Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions. The first one, Representative Layman, I made that trip a lot of times. How fast do you drive between Deer River and Grand Rapids?
The speed limit.
Mr. Chair, Representative Eklund, that's an unfair question.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this will probably be to the city administrator. So have you looked at what the increased costs for individual assessments are going to be for this project for your homeowners
Mr. Box.
or your business people? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Representative, we haven't calculated that out so much. We're doing a $3.5 million project currently in 2018. The assessments are going to increase, the average household in our town probably is $50,000 value average. And it is, I believe, will be assessed probably in that, add about 40 to 50 some dollars to their annual property tax.
Representative Eklund.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And so then you talked about potential expansion and that type of thing. Have you calculated what the cost for new hookups are going to be for if there's new housing developments or that sort of thing?
Mr. Chair, Representatives, our city council just has been really, really good about seeing that those utilities are paying for themselves. So as the need arises, the cost for that service is funding. Those two funding sources are paying for themselves at this point. So yes, they do look at that as we add infrastructure and hopefully add the economic base, then the rates will will in turn pay for those utilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, any final comments on this, Representative Layman?
No, I just thank you for your time and attention, and I know that wastewater projects are a priority for all of us. We all have these in our communities, and Deer River is one of the key areas where we have an issue. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least today, we have House File 3760, Representative Wagenius.
Thank you, Chair Erdl, and members, if I could, shall I start?
You were just getting your mic adjusted there. Thank you. Welcome, Representative Wagenius. Please introduce yourself and begin.
Thank you. Jean Wagenius, representing part of Minneapolis and part of Richfield. I am bringing to you a bill to put solar on schools, and I'm doing it for two reasons. One, to save schools money, and secondly, as an educational tool. And let me start off with the money-saving part of it. There should be something in your packet that shows how I estimated the cost of electricity to schools, and this is just public schools. And the way I did it, because there obviously, we don't have this kind of resource, the way I did it is to get a representative high school, and that is Southwest High School in Minneapolis, that spends $274,000 last year for electricity. I have a representative middle school, Justice Page Middle, spent $146,000 last year for electricity. And I have Hale, which is a K-3 system, spent $63,000 for electricity last year. Hale is different from most schools because it's highly energy efficient. It was insulated for noise since it's very close to the airport. And when you insulate for noise, you also insulate for use of utilities. So we multiplied out with the numbers that given to me by House Research of the number of schools in the state, and what we spent last year would have been $220 million plus on electricity. I think I have lowballed it, $220 million. So one of the ways we could help schools is to put solar on their roof, and this is the bonding bill that I'm presenting to you. To start that process, I also have another bill about putting solar on school roofs, and we can talk about that too if you would like. The second reason to do this is to engage students in math and science. So I'm going to use the example of Chisago Lakes Middle School. They had a project called Project Independence, and they put up 44 solar panels to supply electricity for their media center at a total cost of $73,000. Chisago Lakes estimates that they're going to save $433,000 in energy costs over the 30-year lifespan of these solar panels. What they engage their students because students, of course, all have all these electric devices, just like we do. And the question of where does the electricity come from? How does it work? And in Chisago, I mean, that's what they're discussing at their school. And they have a live feed with computer models in their school lobby that shows how much electricity is being generated and when. There's another example that I just want to mention to you, and that is Mounds View School District expects to save $1 million on its utility bills in the next 25 years. They are very enthusiastic about how solar is giving students a real-world learning experience. And we could talk more about that, how much physics teachers love it, but I think I'm going to just pass the baton right now to, why don't you introduce yourself?
So,
Just one moment, please. Just for clarification here, apparently I am informed that the 3760, the House file, is the wrong appropriation. Technically, we're talking about House File 3675, which has the appropriation,
Yes,
the bonding appropriation.
yes.
So, introduce yourself, please.
sure. My name is David Schaefer. I'm with the Minnesota Solar Energy Industries Association. We're a trade group. We represent about 100 different solar companies around the state. That includes the installers, the developers, a couple manufacturers, and just other solar-related businesses. This particular idea is one I became aware of just a few weeks ago once I saw this bill, and I realized that it's a truly great idea. And it's a wonderful way to spend $4 million because the return on investment is going to be amazing for these schools. There's 4 parties that actually win in this bill. The first is the schools themselves. As Representative Wagenius was talking about, they get to save money every day that they're using energy. And the payback period that we're expecting to see, it depends on the way that this money can finally be allocated, because it is a bonding bill. The solar array would have to be owned by the state. And so some of our members are expecting that the payback period will be about 10 years, but if they can figure out a way to legally still have the school own it, but finance it using the techniques they've been financing a lot of other projects, they can get it down below five years. So a typical solar array lasts, or it's at least warranted for 25 years, and it tends to go even further than that. So you can see the payback period is pretty short in comparison to that, and they have an opportunity to make a lot more money. So that's the first party that wins. The second one is students. So as Representative Wagenius is talking about too, there's ways for students to get involved. They can get up on the roof. There's K-12 education that's STEM focused that they can get out of this. We even have some members that have created their own curriculum and give it to the schools when they put solar arrays up on top of the roofs. So this is a great education opportunity, and students can learn about everything from physics to engineering. And it's a great career exploration opportunity. Maybe they want to be an engineer, a physicist, or maybe one day they'll want to be a solar installer. So they win there too. The next is the taxpayers. So this is one I didn't realize the first hearing I had, and I've been thinking about it. The money that goes forward in bonding can help save the schools money, and in turn that can save the taxpayers in those districts money on their property taxes. So this actually saves local property tax value as well, because that money that would otherwise go to the school now doesn't have to. It can stay in their pockets. And last is, of course, the solar business community. We have, like I said, 100 different members in our association. There's several different solar installers that could benefit from this. But we also have various manufacturing facilities around the state. Layman is up in the Iron Range. We have Alexandria Industries that makes racking down in Alexandria. And so the entire state of Minnesota can really benefit from this up and down the solar supply chain. So this is really a tremendous bill for all different sectors and different groups in Minnesota, and I really hope that you decide to include it in a bonding bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Uglum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the testifier, you mentioned the fact that a solar array typically lasts 20, 25 years, and then you said the payback could be as little as 5 or 10 years. What is the replacement cost of the solar array after that period of time? And I'm assuming, did you have that figured in your payback costs?
Mr. Schaefer?
Representative, the removal cost is, to my knowledge, fairly low. I guess I've not asked that question, and I don't know if it's included in the payback period, but it would not be that substantial. Typically, these systems are ballasted on a rooftop like a school, so you can just go up there and with some equipment just lift them off. So it's not like you're having to unscrew everything even.
Mr. Chair?
Representative Uglum.
Yeah, to that point about the roofs, and you talked about ballasted roofs, built-up roofs, and things like that. What now? Are you also saying that, for instance, the battery storage and things like that, which is inherent with a solar array, would that be also placed on the roof?
Mr. Schaefer.
Representative Ulam, the energy storage system could be added. Typically, I don't see them in many of the systems that we've been doing, but if you wanted to add an energy storage system, you can. Those are typically a little bit more expensive. There are inverters that take the direct current created by the solar array and turn it into alternating current and send it back out, and those would typically be on the roof or just off the side, but that'd be the only other equipment besides the panels and the racking that's on the roof.
Chair.
Representative Uglum.
Again, to the roofs, now, you know, every roof is designed to carry a certain amount of load weight and everything else. Now, we're placing these arrays on roofs. We probably haven't done the engineering or don't know about the effect of the added weight on these roofs. Has that been considered in any of your costing figures? In fact, you know, engineering costs and calculating of that would be, could result in some significant new costs for the school districts.
Representative Uglum,
Mr. Schaefer.
Before any solar array goes up, there's typically a structural engineering study that's done, and I would assume it would be done with the school as well. And if the costs were a great enough impediment, I don't think any solar installer would recommend going any further. So these would only go up on roofs that can support them, and that's been standard practice around the state. I think there was even a study by Bront Intertech done a few years ago that suggested that typically a school roof can handle this.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Uglum.
One other question. And then, you know, the technology and the efficiency of solar is getting better every time and everything else. With the, you know, installation of these solar arrays on the roof, have you considered the cost of upgrading to new technology in your costs that you cited in terms of the total cost of, you know, the 20, 25-year type depreciation and the cost of savings in electricity?
Mr. Schaefer.
Representative Uglum, if I'm understanding the question correctly, and please correct me if I'm not, so the panels last for 25 years, that's how long they're warranted for. In theory, you wouldn't have to switch them out for any reason, but if you were to switch them out for further advancements in technology, I would assume you'd be doing that because it would further reduce your cost. You'd say, you know what, these modules aren't nearly as efficient today, or as they were 10 years ago, relatively speaking, so there's these really efficient modules, and maybe it makes sense to put those up there instead. So that's the only, aside from like a malfunction that would be warranted and paid for, so typically when you put the modules up on the roof, they stay there for the duration of their lifetime.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Uglum. Now we have Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And of the testifier, just kind of along Uglum's line of questioning there, but what, say one of the high schools that's been looked at in terms of their costs, what is the cost to install this initial solar panel program?
Mr. Schaefer.
Representative, that can be extraordinarily varying. It's based on the kilowatt size and depends on how much the school can use. In this particular bill, you're not able to sell any excess energy back to the grid, so it'd have to be sized to the usage of the school. So I got some estimates from some of my installers that some of these arrays can be as much as $300,000 if it were to be unfinanced. So that would be the amount that would need to be, I guess, put forward, at least initially.
All right, thank you.
Representative Sock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering about the grid. You're mentioning that they cannot sell back, which infers that they are not on the grid, but the school would have to be on the grid because we haven't figured out how to bridge that space. Even batteries today aren't up to putting that together, so I don't think we'll see any school buildings that are going off-grid completely. I'm just, and I really think that this is a wonderful idea. I think that it can and should be done. And I think evidence of it is the number in our area, where we have a few less tall buildings, is we would be more likely to put them out on ground mounts, and we are currently doing that with the city, the co-ops. Everybody's putting out a solar farm now, and they are interconnecting, and not so much using a single user as using co-op across the grid using systems. So it's just causing me a little bit of confusion on how that's arranged.
Representative Wagenius.
If I could, this is not meant to be off-grid. What the bill says is that we would fund solar up to the level that a school is using. A school could not use this bonding money to earn money. So that's, I think, the reference that was being made. The bill also allows a school to put it on the roof or on the parking lot or next door to the school. So it could be on school property too. It does not necessarily have to be on the roof. So the bill also allows for that. One of the things I didn't mention to members is I split the money 50-50 between Metro and outstate. But I will tell you that I do have another bill that uses, for folks in the XL territory, would be, it's a different bill, but would use the Renewable Development Fund for paying for solar for schools there. If we did that at $4 million, and then I would suggest that the $4 million in this bill be all used for outstate. So be fair. I'm trying to do the fairness thing here.
Sack.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to stretch it one more click, can any part of this, is it thought about that it would fund the upfront cost of a school district or building joining a solar farm that already exists?
That is not the way this is structured.
I'm sorry?
That's not the way the bill's structured.
Yeah.
Representative Jurgens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you aware of, to the testifier, are you aware of other school districts that have already implemented, have already purchased, and what kind of a return on investment are they getting for their solar investment?
Mr. Schaefer.
Representative, yeah, we have several members that have done this already. They are getting, man, you might have better numbers on this than I do off the top of my head, but it's a tremendous payback for them. They're under 5 years on all those other schools that have done it.
Representative Wagenius, do you have?
You know, there are two ways to structure this, and if we were to use the XL Renewable Development Fund, which we could only use in the XL territory, you could do public-private partnerships, which would have a much quicker payback, but you don't want to say that folks in outstate Minnesota couldn't have the same opportunities, so you would structure it a little bit differently.
Follow up?
I'm thinking Representative Considine might have something to enlighten us further on this, and we'll come.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I was on the city council in Mankato, we put solar panels on top of the public safety. I believe the payback was $3,000 a year. The initial investment was roughly $25,000, and the they were guaranteed for 25 years. So I think after 10 years, we were making money every year on it. So.
Thank you. Representative Jurgens?
I know with the public-private investment that you were talking about, Representative, in Cottage Grove a few years ago, that's what the city did, not the school district. And I can't remember the company that they worked with, but in that case, the company paid for the entire solar installation, and then the city and that company split the profits, I guess if you want to call it that, the gain. And I think that was a 25-year agreement, something like that. So there are other programs available to us, my point.
But in this case,
Representative Wagenius?
let's all remember that it is the state that is doing the funding here, so it's the school that is the beneficiary, and we are trying to help schools reduce their electricity costs so they can use those dollars for other things.
Mr. Schaefer?
I'd also like to add that the schools that, in many buildings that got solar at pretty cheap rates were using the Made Minnesota program, which was, I think historically, it could be used in a lot of the investor-owned utility service territories, but that program no longer exists. And so the only incentive for solar in Minnesota now that a school could potentially try to use would be solar rewards, and that's just Excel service territory. And so what's great about this bill is it allows for solar outside of Excel service territory. And while there might be alternative ways to finance this would make projects out in more, I guess, rural parts of Minnesota much more financeable.
Representative Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Wagenius and Mr. Schaefer. There's a lot going on with solar, and there's a lot more in this bill than I think you can even think about. I have the pleasure of serving on the Capital Area Architecture Planning Board, and we're looking at 7 or 8 buildings on the campus of the Capitol right now, putting solar on them, because it makes sense, and also because the state should be leading, not just following on issues around installation of solar panels. I think that one of the things that would be interesting to tie into this is, schools often have repair on their roofs, and the timing of something like this, if you time it along the same time as a repair, there's actually increased savings because of efficiencies at the time. But the thing that I think is really, really a fascinating thing is what happens when schools do these types of things and they actually get in competition around issues related to energy use. Before I came here, I was involved in a lot of student housing on different campuses, and sometimes we would set up a project so that it would have a certain type of efficiency and certain type of energy use, certain types of things like that. And you'd have like one student housing project competing against another student housing project to try to see who could use less energy. And there was often a lot of pride that would be created. So I think there's an opportunity for other things beyond just the solar to help make students aware of their impact on their use of energy and the impact on the environment, and sort of tying all this stuff together. So I think there's great opportunity for some things that I don't even think we're thinking about in just funding these solar arrays. Thank you.
Representative Carlson?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, some of what I was going to say has been touched on, but I was going to point out a couple of things when the issue of roofs came up. Not far from where I live, there's Northview Middle School in the Osseo district.
Which is where I student taught.
Is that right? Well, I doubt if they had solar there when you student taught, Mr. Chairman, but...
I was the sunshine.
You were the sunshine, okay. But at any rate, many years ago, they put solar in there, and they didn't put it on the roof. It's on a part of the athletics field they didn't touch the athletic fields. There's a bank, and then they put the solar panels in along that bank, which happened to be close to the schools. So my point is that it doesn't always have to be the roof. There are other alternatives, I suppose, depending on the geography around the school and the space that would be available. The other thing I was going to point out, when Representative Dean talked about the growth of solar, City of Crystal, which is the city I happen to live in,
when they built a new city garage just a few years ago, they included solar panels on the roof, in that case, for the new city garage. And I think they had a grant from some source. In fact, I know they had a grant. I don't recall what the source of the funding was, but that did help with the costs, so the city council decided to move ahead with it. So I think there is a lot of potential, and when Representative Wagenius and I talked about solar in the schools the other day, I was quite surprised when she shared the number that we spend on energy in our school districts and what the impact on our school finances would be as a result of being able to save on energy. So I think it's a good idea. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll have to talk to you about your student teaching there, because I had some good friends that
Mr.
taught
Solly,
there.
do you know Jeff Solly?
That name sounds familiar, seriously, yeah. Did you know Bob Williams? No.
A return engagement to Representative Sock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any word yet on grid chargebacks to people that are putting up their solar? I mean, you're in the solar industry, so you know what I'm talking about, and I'm wondering if that dialogue has started where the energy companies, I mean, and we all need to come to grips with it, because it is a reality. We need the grid as part of our asset set, and we can't start thinking this is pure free to put up solar arrays and not, well, some of us could go on the grid or off the grid, but to a large extent, public buildings are going to have to start paying for the grid that they don't think they're using. And so I was just curious if there's any advice or words that are being put forward.
Well, that's not the
Representative
case
Wagenius.
in the Excel service territory, but it would be the case for some of the munis and co-ops. And so there might be a charge depending on the size of the system. And it depends on which muni and co-op you're talking about, so I can't give you specifics.
Yeah. And I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that there are a lot of variables, and I was just curious if that market has started to coalesce, sort of stabilize, to kind of set itself.
Representative, yeah, so
Mr. Schaefer.
in November, there was a Public Utilities Commission case where they found that the methodology that the co-ops were using was actually illegal. And so the co-ops had to reform how they were calculating their fees. And now they've just begun implementing them. And for the most part, the fees have dropped around the state. There's a couple that have somehow increased, but for the most part, they've decreased. And while some believe that they're necessary, I would say our industry typically believes that they're not all that important to have, at least at the moment. And the evidence for that is Xcel Energy's value of solar rate. So they computed a rate that sort of takes the wholesale rate and then stacks the benefits of solar on top of it. And that rate basically indicates that right now, at least at the low penetration levels, ratepayers should be paying people to go solar. So that's the, to me, the evidence actually suggests that fees aren't necessary, at least yet, and only about half of the co-ops are charging them at the moment.
Thank you.
Representative Lewick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The testifier, you mentioned a 25-year warranty. Is that unlimited on the panels? When I say unlimited, does that guarantee if we get a hailstorm or something like that, that we know, at least our experience where I live, they will definitely wipe out some level of panels?
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes, Representative. So the warranties, I guess in your definition, would be unlimited. I know that, well, maybe not the warranties themselves, but typically there's an insurance requirement with the installation of these. And so I know that there were some silicon energy panels that were up recently. There was hail damage, and that was a great opportunity to take those particular modules down and then put some new ones up. So hail is covered under the typical insurance requirements, I think.
So a follow-up, Mr.
Representative
Chair.
Lewis.
So exactly who pays the insurance? Is that like when I got my homeowner policy for my windows and I pay the bill if hail breaks it? Or I sounds like, you just need to clarify that. Are you, as the manufacturer, going to pay that insurance bill?
Mr. Schaefer.
Representative, no, so it's typically insurance that's a requirement by the utility that's interconnected to it. And so the utilities want to make sure that the solar arrays don't accidentally start their grid on fire. And so there's various insurance requirements in order to interconnect to this. And so the party that pays is usually the owner of the array. And so this would be baked into that payback period.
Representative Lewick.
Thank you. We might want to include that when we talk to our school superintendents out there, that you're going to have to carry a special insurance policy if you're going to do this, I would assume, because we don't see those, at least in our schools in our area. I guess the other thing is the comment about the co-ops. Particularly, you get further out into rural Minnesota, the further it is between those transformers, and that is a huge cost to the ratepayers, who happen to be the people who live in the community. And so there's still a real give and take over whether the solar panel that's putting electricity into the grid, as Representative Sock talked about, that is a huge, huge cost to the people that live in that area. So, and obviously the schools are a part of that. But, you know, the areas that, the reason I asked it is I know Mille Lacs Electric Energy up in our area has got a garden right in the front of their building there, and I know they've had to replace panels strictly because of storm damage. And I also know that we had a little problem down in Camp Ripley with storm damage, and I don't know whether it's like trailer houses that the storms go after the panels, but you know, maybe it's just a coincidence, but gosh sakes, I know that they immediately had, within 2 years, we're going, whoops, we had to replace a significant amount of the panels, because that was just one bad hailstorm that came through.
So,
Mr. Schaefer.
Representative, so there's 2 points in there, and it sounds like you might want to go as well. So the first is about the selling back. So in this bill, so you can't sell any net excess energy. So that part's there. I do understand that some co-ops don't particularly like solar because their product is energy, and they would like to sell as much energy as they can, and if someone's generating their own, they no longer get to sell them as much. So if a fee were instated on a school, I would hope that the taxpayers, well, I guess if the utility is starting to have to charge more because of energy, I would hope that the taxpayers would see the savings that they're getting by not having to pay as many property taxes. So hopefully there's kind of a balancing act there. The other issue was the storm damage, and while some really intense hail can cause damage to panels, they're very structurally sound, and actually my understanding of the Camp Ripley project is it wasn't the damage from hail or anything, it was that actual like trailers were picked up and thrown into the panels and knocked them over. So none of the panels were pulled out of the ground or anything like that.
Oh, yes, we certainly have equivalent, either straight line winds or tornadoes that completely destroy things. But we also have pretty serious ice storms that are problematic too. But yeah, I just, please don't associate the costs and the challenges that rural Minnesota and those rural electric co-ops have with XL Energy. We're still suffering from some of their brainstorms at the Laurentian and at the Benson plant. So when we start throwing that name around as God's gift to brilliant ideas, that doesn't go over so well in a lot of parts of Minnesota because there are people suffering because of the costs that have been inflicted on them.
Representative Wagenius,
For a follow-up.
you want to add on to what he said?
Well, this is not a mandatory program. This is a voluntary program, so I think schools should make reasonable choices.
Thank you. Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Wagenius, for bringing this forward. I'm finding the conversation very interesting, learning about all of this. Interesting concept. I do have a question for your testifier, just as a former elementary school teacher, when I picture these solar arrays, if they're not up on the roof, but let's say a school district puts them located next to the school, I happen to know the students would love to think that was a wonderful place to play. And I'm just curious, are they dangerous? Would they have to fence them in? How does that work around kids who would think it's a playground?
Mr. Schaefer.
Representative, that's a very good question. So if you drive out into the bounds of Excel service territory, you can see a lot of community solar gardens that are going up, and all of those are fenced in. So I would assume that this would be very similar. Any ground mount like this would be fenced in. I would say that in some ways, it's probably not the safest device to have right next to students that might stumble over there. So what's nice about this bill, I believe there's an adjacency component to it. So you could fence it off with any type of fence to make sure it's on even a different parcel of land and connect it over.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions or comments, we meet again tomorrow. But for today, as Sergeant Preston said, well, King, this case is closed.